morning, everyone. I'm Joanne Evenson. I'm one of the owners of Global Management Partners, and you'll see with me is Janelle Kepker, the leader here at GMP and owner with me. We're really happy that you're all able to come here today for one of GMP's webinars that's only offered to our clients. And we know that one of the most important things that all of you do is board governance. And so Mary Kay Delvo, who is with us today, she is the founder of Inspiring Sight, a strategy coaching and facilitation organization and professional. And I'll have Mary Kay introduce herself, but this is part one of a two-part series. Couple of housekeeping really quick. You'll all get a recording to this webinar, so you can share it with your colleagues who maybe weren't able to make it. And I will also put Mary Kay's information here, LinkedIn and website for you. So please welcome Mary Kay Delvo.
Thank you, Joanne. And thank you for offering me this opportunity to talk to people really interested in learning more about board work and how to govern well. I'm not going to give you a bunch about my background. Joanne is putting some links in the chat if you want to explore further my LinkedIn and my website, but I want to take all the time we have to be learning about boards, not learning about me. I will tell you this just to show you that I have some experience with boards, is that I have been a staff person to boards and committees at very large organizations. I have been a board member myself. I've chaired boards, and I have been an employee reporting to a board. So I've dealt with boards and been in all those different roles that many of you either are in now or have been at some time in your life. And I really try to bring that understanding of like how that whole system works, because it's when we don't understand the cross connections that we're not seeing the full picture. So that's what I come to you with, and I work with boards now. Governance work is extremely important work, and I always say no one grows up dreaming to be a board member. And so it's like you get thrown on a board, and governance is nuanced. It's not a natural way of thinking or speaking compared to how we're trained for our other jobs. And so that's why board training is so critical. So one of the major gaps I've observed in my work with boards and in doing strategic planning for nearly a decade is that we train boards about what governance is, but we don't teach them how to govern. What does it sound like, look like, feel like? How do I know if my questions are in the governance lane or the management lane? How do I use all those documents we spend time creating, which may seem boring at times, but they serve a purpose, and how do we ask questions about them? And so I've adapted my training to help get at how to govern, not just teach you about governance. But we only have 45 minutes here, so we're going to go real high level today. First, if I've got a poll, I want to understand some things about how your boards are operating. Joanne, if you would put the poll up, and I'm just going to cover just some quick housekeeping things while that poll is coming up and you're answering that. If you could, it's just a oh, we can't hear you, Joanne. There it is. Oh no, that's question 3. We need question 1.
Sorry, I'm new to the whole poll thing, so here we go. Do you see it now?
Question 3.
It's still question 3. Okay, sorry.
So I'll ask you the question. If we're having trouble with the poll, we can just put this. There it is.
There it is. I'll get it.
So just a couple of housekeeping things. My preference is for everyone to be on camera if possible. There's good research that shows that nearly 70% of communication is nonverbal, and it really helps me, and it will help you have better discussion if we can see each other and and see the people we're working with. So just a request. Also, I'm going to ask that you reserve the chat for group discussions and avoid side conversations so that we're all focused on the same conversations here. Please use the chat. Um, we just want to keep the conversation to what we're talking about. So, how are we doing on the poll, Joanne? Do we have a good percentage
We're
of
good.
answers?
Yes, we do. I'll end it now to show it.
Okay, show us our results. So the question was, how often does your board discuss its own effectiveness? Okay, so regularly, 11%, occasionally, rarely. These results do not surprise me at all. This is one of the areas of board governance that tends to get missed, is actually evaluating yourself, because that's how boards improve, but it's how they improve the organization as well. So thank you for doing that. That gives me some sense of where your boards are at in terms of that self-awareness of their own self. So another question. You can raise your real hand or you can raise your digital hand. I have no preference. If you have ever planted or cared for a vegetable or flower garden. Okay, so it looks like most here. If you're not on camera, if you could put in the, yeah, raise your digital hand if you're not on camera. What can you share about your experience planting or raising a garden? And feel free to come off mute, put it in the chat. What do you notice about the experience of gardening?
That it's not for me.
Okay. I'm actually going to bring that back around. Okay. Thank you for that. It takes time. It's not so much successful. It takes attention and time to nurture. It needs tending. Not all plants work in your area. Plant the seeds, then you need to water and tend to it. I see a lot of tending. The environment may change. It's hard work, isn't it? I mean, the end result looks great, but it's really hard work. James, did you have a question? Your digital hand is still up. Just checking in.
No, sorry, I'll put it down.
Okay. So we're going to get into this, and I'm going to show you the connection between gardening and board work. So I want to give you just a little context about where we're headed. So this is a two-part session. So today, the purpose of today is to anchor the garden seasons metaphor, which I'm going to introduce you to demonstrate the seasonal board cycle. So we're going to be doing some interaction. We're going to be in breakout groups. You're going to get some exercises to practice, and then some homework, self-work to help you make it stick. And you're going to get a tool to go with that. And then next session, hopefully you're able to attend both or will watch the video for both. We're going to recognize the difference between knowing governance and showing governance for advancing this cycle I'm going to talk with you about today. So, like tending a garden, board building is ongoing. It's not linear. It's not something you do this thing once and then you're done with governance. Or you created the document, you completed the bylaws, you did an update, so now you're done with governance. It's not linear. It requires, just like a garden, planning, care, and attention to grow and thrive. You can't just plant, you can't just put people on a board and then walk away. And often when it comes to board training or development, we see you might get some training during orientation, and then it's like you're thrown to the wolves and you're supposed to know how to govern. And so it's really important that when you think about bringing board members on, and even board members who have been on your board for a while, they need constant tending and care and development so they can tend, care, and develop their organizations. I used to work with foster parents, and we always said, if they knew better, they'd do better. When I hear people complain about their boards, it's because usually they're not trained. They don't know their role. So it's our job to make sure that becomes a priority for the organization. So I'm going to introduce you to a seasonal board cycle. I use a lot of metaphor. I do some nature photography, and nature is very inspirational for me and in helping people visualize their work. And so I've developed a seasonal board cycle that goes along with key tasks of the board in self-governing themselves that align with the roles of seasons, things you do in different seasons. So board service follows the rhythm of seasons. So you can probably tell by the symbols on my right. There's the growing plant. That's spring. The sun is summer. The leaf is fall, and the snowflake is winter. So spring is about planting and clarity. This is where the phase of the board is. This is your strategic recruitment. So it's very important. So in the chat, when I asked about, tell me your experience of planting a garden or tending to a garden, some people said some plants don't grow in certain environments, or it might be the wrong environment for the plant. It's extremely important you get the right people for your board, not just a butt in a seat. And what I mean by the right people are that they're willing to be accountable and responsible to the roles that are clearly articulated to them at the beginning. That you have, like a garden, you often plant plants of different heights, different colors that bloom at different times. In a board, you need people who have different experiences, different skill sets, different backgrounds that bring different perspectives to your board table. And so the strategic recruitment is all about making sure you have the right mix in your garden, in your board garden, so that they can flourish together. And when they flourish together, they will ensure your organization flourishes together. So one question you can ask is, is this the right environment for your board candidates? I'm going to back up a minute and just say, we have a short amount of time together. So this is a high level overview, but I'm going to have you actually practice some things to help you bring this home. So that's why I'm going through this very quickly. So summer is about growing practices. This is about effective engagement is the stage of the board cycle. So keep the energy high, pull the weeds. Where do you have people on your board who are preventing other things from growing or are taking over your flower garden or your vegetable garden? This is when you put practices in place. You shore up skills and knowledge. How do you utilize your board members so they can be engaged, so they have opportunity to share the gifts they're bringing to the table on behalf of the organization? And this is where you fertilize growth and you divide labor. So this is where your committee work comes in. There's officers on a board, but there's lots of ways to bring other people more into that board service without being an officer. And you can spread the work out and divide the labor, which builds engagement because you have everyone investing in. Fall is harvesting impact. So this is about really intentional revitalization of the board and the organization. So fall or harvesting impact is about measuring results. So what are you learning from your staff about the impact of the work? How do you know it's leading you toward that mission? What questions are you asking to understand these things about your organization? Aligning with your strategic roadmap or strategic plan. I call it a strategic roadmap instead of a plan because a plan sounds finite and a roadmap is ongoing. And if you think about any map, you run into things like construction and detours and flat tires and A strategic roadmap says this is where you think you're going to end up. This is where you intend to go, but it allows you to adapt along the way without changing the endpoint, the strategy, which aligns with your mission. And then winter is about renewal and foresight. Rejuvenation, forward planning. This is where your strategic plan or roadmap, where you might be updating it or refreshing it, looking out at priorities for the upcoming year. This is where you celebrate the staff and the board that what were your wins this year together. And it's really important that we celebrate, because board work can be heavy. It can at times feel unrewarding, because you're working on missions that are out here that you're not going to see the mission results in a week or a year. You're building towards that. You're growing towards that. And if you don't celebrate, you may lose your energy for that. It's a time to reflect on the past growing season, so the past year, and then to prepare for new growth. So your seasonal board cycle. So this is how the board role fits into spring. That's your strategic recruitment. For summer, that's your effective engagement. And these are all the things I just outlined. For fall, that's when you intentionally revitalize. And for winter, it's your renewal and foresight. And if you'll notice on the image, the arrows, but that these 4 seasons overlap with the mission and the strategic map at the center. That is your core of every decision you make as an organization, whether you're staff or board. But as governance, it is your core responsibility to always be steering the questions, conversations, and decisions around that, regardless of who the president or the chair is. It does not change with who the president is next year, unless the whole board changed your strategy. So that's one of the areas I see a lot especially in associations, as one subset of nonprofits, is that I hear when people call me to work with them, and I hear, well, our president, the focus of the organization this year is this, because that's what our new president really champions. The president needs to champion the whole organization. So they may focus on one part of your strategic plan because it's a priority for the organization, but each president should not be coming in saying, this is my legacy this year. Once you take a nonprofit status, the legacy, all of that belongs to the community. It's not about you, it's about the organization. So that's why the center of this cycle is your strategy and your mission. Everything comes back to that. As board members, we're all stewards of advancing that. So before I put you into breakout groups, I just want to pause and get your thoughts, questions, feedback. Thank you for joining us, James. Hopefully you can watch the recording and join us next time. And feel free to come off mute or put it in the chat. Any thoughts, questions? How's this landing for you? Is the visual resonating for people? The connection with the garden, is that resonating at all? Stacy says it is. Quiet bunch, you're all in deep reflection. That's what I think is happening.
Mary Kay, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
How would you suggest that an organization plan for redeveloping a strategic plan? Should it balance when you have a new president turnover? or just to do it on a regular cycle? Should you tie it to the transition of your top lead person?
Yes. So strategic planning should be a constant cycle in your organization. So how strategic plans are done has shifted because the pace of our world is so fast. So it used to be you would do a 10-year strategic plan and you just, set out a goal for each year or goals, and then you would, we ticked that one off, and then you would visit the next one, but you didn't really change the plan for a decade. Now, even 3 years, so even 3 years is a long time for a strategic plan, which is why I now talk about it as a strategic roadmap instead. So there's two parts to the strategic plan. One is the board and leadership team setting out the strategy, the priorities. The other part is stakeholder feedback. So this is how I approach it with organizations. You do a comprehensive strategic mapping process about every 3 years where you gather stakeholder feedback. You get external information feeding the board for their decision making. So it could be clients, it could be donors, it could be partners, it could be all of the above. It depends on what work you do, members. So about every 3 years, you want to gather that external, do major environmental scanning, stakeholder feedback. The in-between years, the board is visiting that plan every board meeting. All your discussions should be checking in on that plan on a regular basis. And then annually having a half day or a full day retreat with your board to really have strategic discussions about, are we on the right track? What do we need to tweak? What do we need to adapt? That's that's where you're pulling from, your planting, that's why you need all those different voices on your board. You need different perspectives on your board so that you're bringing in information from all areas to inform those discussions. So every 3 years, bring in stakeholder feedback, unless there's a big change in your organization, or you decided on a different direction and you really need to understand it. So there's always extenuating circumstances. But in general, stakeholder feedback every 3 years. The years in between, you keep the plan going and you're constantly revisiting it, adapting, assessing, evaluating, getting curious about, looking to your data that the staff are providing based on their measurements. Does that help?
Very much. Thank you, Mary
Okay.
Kay.
Jane, can you tell me about you said the visual helps to make it clear the dynamic role of the board. Would you be willing to just share what you mean by that? I think it's
Yeah, well, it looks dynamic to me the board is continually planting, growing, and then revitalizing. And so that seemed very dynamic to me, that it's not that you just set up your board and you tell them, hey, we got these 4 seasons that we're going to go through and then go. But that it sounds like you're going to be visiting this often with the board to keep on track with growing your organization, your mission.
You're exactly right. And I love that you use the word dynamic role of the board, because the board should be dynamic. It should be, if you notice in the visual, the overlap between all those seasons, which in and of itself says they're not static and you complete one and then, then you're done and then you complete the next. I grew up on a farm, and the winter is, you have to have your seeds planted. I mean, the seeds you want to plant in the summer, you need to order those like February. Like, you need to know what crop do you want to do next season. You don't decide that in May when you take go out and plant the field. You've done that 6 months before. And board work is the same. You don't look at who's going to fill my board seat when I my term is up. you don't decide that when your term is up. You're always looking for the next board members, cultivating them, helping to bring them into the organization gradually.
I love that, Mary Kay, because I think one of the things that boards, in all their busy work, they have real jobs too, or lives outside of that volunteer work, but it's creating that leadership pipeline. How
Yeah.
are you developing your future leaders? How are you preparing them to be in that board position? So I think that is really meaningful to me. And I think another thing is that it's easy to pick people that are just like you because you
Mhm.
know that, you're going to get along and, the
Yep.
world's going to be happy. But what you really need are people not like you, to bring in all those different perspectives. So I appreciated you bringing that into the conversation too.
I'm going to turn it over now to all of you. We're going to go into breakout rooms for about 5 minutes. Your instructions. So we're going to have you answer a couple questions together in your breakout room. And so the governance committee, this is your scenario. The governance committee is excited about a high profile candidate for the board. It's a well-connected community leader with strong name recognition. During the interview, the candidate admits they're very busy and they can't guarantee they'll attend most meetings, but they're happy to lend their name and help when possible. So your instructions is to discuss. I've got a couple questions to guide your discussion. How does the board proceed with this situation? And the questions, of course, tie back to the seasonal board cycle I just introduced you to. So Joanne, if you would put them in their breakout rooms, and there's a link in the chat so you can bring this scenario and the questions with you. If someone from, do they need a password to get the document, Joanne?
Yeah, the password is not working.
Joanne, can you just pop it in the
There you go. Try GMP all caps. I must have, my fingers must have been happy when I created that and I capped that one and kept the other one in lowercase. Did that work? Good. Great. So
Yeah, it worked. Yeah.
great. So we're good. Everybody should be able to get that. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. I'm hoping it works. My first time doing this. So here we go.
Be prepared to share out when you come back.
Welcome back, everyone.
I'd love to hear what came up in your groups. What you can either answer the question directly or just share what came up in your discussions. Would you like to start, Khalil?
I thought Joanne would be the best person in our team. She has the headphones, so she can be the best person.
I think you've just been voluntold.
Well, unfortunately, it really wasn't me who had my name on there. I bet it
It's
was
Megan.
either Ariel or maybe
I think
Stacy
it was
or
me.
Megan.
I am
Oh,
showing Joanne. I didn't notice that until just
I'm
now. I'm
sorry.
like, "Ooh, Joanne, they just called you out." I think what in essence, what we talked about was that, probably all of us have either worked with a board or been part of a board that faced this exact scenario. And you really kind of need to touch this topic kind of through all 4 seasons. And the key is, especially in that first part, that strategic part, like depending on what your strategies are or your strategic plan is, you may need somebody with those connections, but they don't necessarily have to sit on your board. They could sit as a task force member. They could sit in a committee. If you are kicking off a huge capital campaign, they could be that voice that introduces you. I always tell everybody it's the coffee conversation. They can invite the high-powered people to the conversation. But it also, the other interesting thing that we talked about was how many of us have an attendance policy inside our board of directors and bylaws that help when you're in this sticky situation of board members that are not participating or don't participate in the board meeting and then suddenly want to be the board president the next year. So that's kind of where we took it in our short conversation.
I love the way you're thinking about that, in that you don't have to be on the board to help the organization. You don't have to have a board seat. There's other ways to do it. And the second thing you brought up about the, we have policies about this. Probably about 80% of the boards I work with have policies about this, but they don't enforce it. I just had one organization where they were giving like their award plaques or whatever as board members were rolling off. And one member like gave everything, like they were at every meeting, they went above and beyond. And then the person next to them attended one meeting a year. And they're like, well, how do we give them the same award as this? Well, giving the award is not the problem. The problem is you didn't enforce the policy, because this person probably shouldn't be on your board at all. And so how do we get, that's part of the board chair's role, is to pay attention to that, check in with their members, have conversations early and often. Like, I noticed you haven't been at, the last 2 meetings. Let's sit down and have a cup of coffee and talk about what's going on. Has something changed in your life when you committed you could do this, but now you can't? Sometimes you have to give people permission to step off a board because they feel guilty they'll leave an opening. But if you address those things up front and are on top of them, which is where the seasons fit in, you're assessing. Great discussion. Others?
One of the things I was thinking about, I wasn't I guess I was in a breakout group, but but when somebody misses a meeting, I think there's a telltale sign. Are you revisiting the same topics from meeting to meeting to meeting? And I think that happens when people miss your meetings, right? And then they don't read the minutes, and then they come to the meeting and they want to talk about it again or change the decision that was made at the previous board meetings. And I think when you start seeing that happening, it's probably time to pause and go, okay, what can we do differently so that we're progressing in our conversations rather than revisiting other things, right? And part of that, and we're probably all a little guilty of it when we're on a committee, volunteer, is to read the materials in advance. There's a reason those materials are provided. And so setting up the expectations of what it means to be a board member in advance, and to your point, Mary Kay, living by them, actually abiding by the policies that you've set.
I when I work with organizations, I work with them to organize their agenda. I just call it a strategic agenda, just to keep the word strategic in front of them. But where you actually you have the bulk of the meeting is a strategic discussion, a governance discussion about the issues you're facing, or understanding what's coming in the future, foresight discussions. And the reports, you don't read the reports, you read those in advance, and you have kind of your consent agenda in the middle. So you reward the people who do their work outside of the board meeting, and you don't repeat it for the people who didn't. That's on them. It's not your job to babysit. Those are great points about also looking at is it something our meeting is it something about our structure that's causing people to disengage? Not necessarily assume the board member is the problem. Maybe our structure is the problem, and are you evaluating that? Other groups, I know we had more than one, and Joanne and I were in our own group. So this is good practice for the boardroom, learning to speak up, share your truth.
I can share our group's summarize that it's helpful too to reflect where the organization is in its evolution. Because at different points in that growth of an organization, you're going to need different skill sets from its board members. So having the ability to reflect on that will drive that who needs to be in the seat. And of course, those decisions, those discussions fit into all those seasons. So, there's building of that governance level discussion in all the seasons to get there. As long as the board's allowed to be intentional and strategic with its building, I think it'll make great choices.
You're spot on. Spot on. Just like you need different skills from an executive director depending on the stage of the organization. Same thing for board.
Yep.
Thank you, Lynette.
Yep.
Other brave souls. Are you deep in thought again?
I have just a comment, and that's based on evidence. LJ would be the best person here to portray what we're doing. His background is filled with plants, so successfully living plants. So that's all.
Are you looking for him to speak?
No, I'm not looking for him. He just disappeared. So.
Okay.
But his background was filled with plants. It's a good.
Oh, okay. Well, if there's nothing else to share, then we'll bring some new questions in. What questions or criteria should guide your decision about the candidate? What kind of things might you ask? Area of specialty, I see in the chat.
Could you explain that a little bit more, like specialty, like maybe for me, if they're well connected or they can support financially, or like. But do you mean strategically to the board, or?
Yeah, so we have a lot of clients that are diverse in the types of members that they might have, right? So let's say they're a physician, or maybe they're a practitioner or a nurse or whatever. So are you represented throughout your organization by specialty? It might be geographic. We have clients that are international. So is your geography well represented? Do you have, Europe, Asia, South America, North America represented? It could be in maybe what you want for, do they have experience in financial? Do they have experience with leadership, strategic planning? What kind of areas do they bring to the table? So I guess it could be experience, specialty, or geographic. There's a lot it depends on your group.
Just to piggyback on that, one area of caution with the specialty question, and this all depends on the mindset of your board, is that I hear this all the time. We don't have an HR, professional on our staff. We need an HR professional on the job or on the board, because that your board isn't looking for that person to be your HR person. And I hear that a lot. I actually know some attorneys who will not serve on boards because their experience has been the board expects they're going to do all this free, pro bono attorney work because they're an attorney on the board. When you talk about specialty, what you're looking, the assumption is not that they're filling a gap in your staffing. It's that they bring a different lens. They bring a different knowledge base. They will ask different questions depending on what background you come from. My husband and I, he's an engineer. I'm a coach and consultant, and he asks very different questions than I ask about the same exact subject. So you want people who come at things from different lenses, from different thought groups, because they will open up your discussion better. So the question on that is what kind of perspective, experiences, thinking would benefit our organization so we can protect and direct it into the future. That's a really good way. The simplest way you can break down governance is about protecting and directing. Everything you should be thinking about, how do we protect the organization from risk, from all kinds of risk, from litigation, from media risk, from risk of losing donors, from risk to our bottom line, from risk to people, our image. How do we protect and direct against that? So I see another question. Megan says, why do you want to be part of the organization? I think that's a really good thing to understand about someone. Just like, why do you want this job? Are you doing it because you want a resume builder? Are you doing it because it makes you feel good? What is it about board service that attracts you to us and us specifically? Another question from Brennan. Does having this individual on the board align with strategic priorities of the organization? So if there's a strategy for increasing visibility, having someone with strong name recognition might help with that. You're exactly right, because board members, one of their roles, while this is not one of their statutory roles, is to be an ambassador for the organization. So as a board member, your role, and this isn't about you need to invest a bunch more time into the board. This isn't about time. This is about your organization being top of mind. And when you're having normal conversations with people in your networks, you're bringing up the good work of this organization, or you're talking to people and say, we're having this challenge. What ideas do you have? Or here's what you should know about this organization. We're the best kept secret because, these are things that board members, you're ambassadors for this organization that you're serving on.
Mary Kay, I just wanted to give a 5-minute warning.
Okay.
Before the end of the session.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to transition us. I had a bunch of questions for you. What risks could arise if the board accepts this candidate without further discussion? What does the scenario highlight the importance of board agreements and accountability? And we've already talked about that, but you have to enforce them. What risks could arise if the board accepts the candidate without further discussion? And then how could the governance or nomination process prevent this situation from happening in the future? So you don't get to a point where you have to say no to someone. So this, I just put the worksheet that you're gonna, you've already shared this. Is this correct? The worksheet's been shared. So this is a tool that you can use for your next, to take one step from this workshop and move it forward. So there's I've provided you, these are not the only questions, these are starter questions for you for each of the 4 stages of the seasonal board cycle that you could bring back to your board and fit in when it makes sense for that. And then discuss it for 10 minutes at your board meeting, one of these questions, and start getting the governance discussions going. This is something, if a board chooses to engage in and follow this seasonal board cycle, you will change the culture of your organization. It won't happen overnight. It will take intentionality, but one question at a time, one 10-minute discussion at a time, and you will start to shift mindsets about how to ask questions. And we could do lots of webinars on this, about ways to do that in all the phases. But so my challenge to you is, well, I'm going to come back to my challenge. So in summary, I just want to say that board service follows the rhythm of the seasons. That's essentially what this was about today. So to make this stick, so we know with learning, just listening to a webinar will not make anything stick. We have to practice. We know this about adult learning. You have to make it stick. You have to bring it back. You have to practice it. So my challenge to you is to pick one question from the worksheet and ask it at your next board or executive team meeting. If you don't have one before our next session on October 29th, pick one governance document to review on your own and create 1 to 3 governance questions just by reading stuff your board has already created. Governance isn't about creating a bunch of extra work. It's about learning how to utilize the work you've already done in a strategic and intentional way that helps you protect and direct your organization. So with that, I will leave it open up for questions until people are ready to pop off.
Well, thank you, Mary Kay. And just really quickly, I did post a link to an evaluation form in the chat. So if you take a moment, that your feedback could help direct what part 2 will look like with Mary Kay in October. We'll be routing again the invitation to all of our client boards and leaders. So in case you didn't register for it, you can get that. We'll be sending out confirmations to those who did. And in addition, I'm posting Mary Kay's information, where in the meantime, if you have any questions, I see a lot of our executive directors are here. Please have conversations with your executive director team, and having that open line of communication is really important. And so thank you, Mary Kay, for today's webinar. And if anybody has any questions, or let's make sure we come to session 2 with them or provide them in the evaluation. And with that, we'll wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you.